I'm often asked why I don't sell private label products on Amazon, but what most people don't know is that I actually did try to launch a private label product once on Amazon, and that it didn't go well at all. This is the story of how I lost over $4,000 trying to launch a private label product on Amazon, and if I'm being honest, I failed miserably. But rather than running away, hiding, and burying my head in the sand, I decided that I would share this story with you guys in the hopes that I could prevent some of you from making the same mistakes that I did.
Reezy Resells. Follow the hustle.
My name is Mike Resendez, and I've been making a living selling online full-time for well over 15 years. In that time period, I grossed over $10 million of sales, and I did it all starting with $5 when I was on food stamps. And I'm not sharing this figure with you to brag, but rather in the hopes of inspiring you. Now, I don't come from money. I actually grew up on food stamps, welfare, government health care. I had a kid and dropped out of high school at age 16. I'm actually still married to the same beautiful woman almost 23 years later. And selling online is what has allowed me to provide for my family and to live a comfortable life. If someone like me was able to break the cycle, even though most of the adults around me, teachers included, had told me that I was going to end up in prison, I know for a fact that you can do it too. I truly believe that selling online is your ticket out of the matrix, which is why I teach it on my YouTube channel for free. So if that's something that you're interested in and you want to take life into your own hands and not just accept what you were dealt, please consider subscribing to the channel so you can learn more. It all started back in early 2018 when I caught a massive case of shiny object syndrome after I returned from a speaking engagement in Canada that had featured a large amount of successful private label sellers. The success that others were having was getting me quite excited, to say the least. What proceeded next was basically the equivalent of a child who had just seen The Karate Kid for the first time and then decided to run around trying to crane kick everyone. Now, before I get into the meat and potatoes of this video, I want to let you know that there's going to be a special bonus at the end. I'm going to share with you a niche that I discovered along my journey, an organic discovery that I made on this journey, as well as the strategy that I used to discover it and how you can use that to find entirely new niches that you can capitalize on. Now back to my crane kicking frenzy. The product I had decided to launch was a play parachute. It's basically a parachute that's not made for parachuting. It's made for playing with. Kids gather around it in a circle, they wave it up and down, you throw it up, you hide underneath it, you shake it, put balls on top of it, that sort of thing. Mostly used in primary school. Choosing this product was actually the first mistake that I made. While the product looked like a great opportunity due to the lack of competition from other sellers on the various listings in the category, it turned out to actually have such low sales volume that there just wasn't enough sales to go around for everyone that was trying to sell that product. Even worse, I didn't know at the time that 90% of the action, meaning the sales that were happening on the various products, weren't being shared in the buy box equally. They were actually going to the top 1 or 2 sellers on every listing. When making my purchasing decisions, I obviously evaluated the product using Keepa. I looked at the sales rank, I looked at the Jungle Scout sales count estimator, and to me, it looked like it sold enough for it to be a good venture. But apparently, the sales charts were just not that accurate. And when you multiply that with the fact that the buy box wasn't being shared evenly with the sellers that were selling it, it turned out to be a nightmare. Here's how I could have remedied it. If I would have just tested the market first, I would have realized this, and I could have done it by purchasing brand name parachutes either from a wholesaler or distributor or even on Amazon itself and selling them at a loss, but still gathering data and seeing how quickly they sell. I could have did it in another way by purchasing 5 to 10 parachutes from AliExpress and setting up a quick listing and getting more data that way, and both of those would have been far better than me jumping the gun and going directly to buying 500 units from a Chinese supplier for $3,800. Now, this mistake was pretty bad, but what I did next was even worse in my opinion. When I analyzed the competition, I noticed that everybody's product basically looked exactly the same. And so I came up with the not so genius idea of differentiating my product from the competition with branding, and most notably by changing the colors. Now, when I was a kid, way back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, and we played with these parachutes in primary school, the game that we would play with it most of the time was actually called popcorn. In this game, you basically just put balls on top of the parachute, and then everybody is around in a circle, flapping the parachute, trying to knock the balls off or launch them as high as they can in the air. And so I decided, why not leverage that and use the game name in the branding? And that's when I decided to call it Popcorn Parachute. After I thought of the name, that's when I decided I was going to change the colors of the parachute so that it could match a popcorn bucket. So instead of the traditional colors, it was going to be alternating red and white. I had even had the idea of later down the line creating some balls that look like popcorn and including them with the product, either on the main listing or on a variation of the listing. Now, usually this is a good idea, changing the branding or the look of your product so that you can differentiate from your competitors. But in this scenario, it wasn't, and I took it way too far. While it's true that customers for this specific type of product were not beholden to any certain brand of parachute, it's also true that everybody that was going to purchase one of these parachutes was looking for that classic, iconic primary color parachute: red, blue, yellow, and green. And yes, I know green is not a primary color. So in this case, changing the way the product looked actually alienated me from my potential future customers and ended up costing me a lot of sales. How could I have avoided it? I think I could have avoided this one by just understanding the nuances of how products are perceived a little bit better and being aware of how certain product changes can affect the perception and desirability of that product with the customer. It also didn't help that I got so romantic about my own ideas in branding changes, which I of course thought were amazing when in fact they were quite terrible. This next mistake I made is a big one, because making this mistake is what resulted in me receiving subpar quality products from my supplier. This is actually something that's very universal that all private label sellers can learn from. So the product I had ordered was cut and sew, much like clothing. If you don't know what that means, don't worry. It just means that it was made of pieces of fabric that were cut and then sewn together. I, of course, wanted to make sure my product was of the utmost superior quality. And when I received the samples from the supplier, they were beautiful. They had zero flaws. They were literally perfect. They were exactly how I wanted them to be for the customer. The problem is that when I received my 500 units a few months later, the quality was nowhere near as good as the samples. There was sloppy, loose threads all over the place. Pieces of fabric were pulling apart, and even handles were ripping off the parachute easily. It was a nightmare. Let's just say it wasn't the quality I was expecting. And when I started to actually pull the parachutes out of the packaging to inspect the quality myself, only about 50% of the parachutes that I opened were meeting the quality that I had expected. But by that time, it was too late because the manufacturer in China already had my money and they weren't exactly cooperating with the communication that I was giving them after the fact. This is when I learned that I should have used a third-party inspection service. Usually, when making private label product orders, you pay half of the order up front. That way, the factory can afford to start making the products for you and paying their employees for the work that they're taking on doing so. And then, when the product's done, you pay the remainder and they ship the product to you. Now, the way it works when you hire a third-party inspection service is basically the same up front. But at the end, when it's time to pay the second half of the balance, you don't pay it until your inspector comes in, inspects the product, and you approve it. So what they do is they come in, they take pictures and samples of random units on the pallet or in the shipment or in the shipping container. They get videos, they send you all this information, and with that information, you can see with your own eyes the quality of your product before you pay the remaining balance, which is usually the profit for the manufacturer. That way, you're protected. because the manufacturer wants to get paid, and you're not going to pay them until the product meets the quality that you were told you were going to get. The importance of this step cannot be stressed enough, especially if you're working with a new supplier that you haven't quite developed a good working relationship with. If you don't use an inspector, you just cannot be certain what the quality will be like of the products that you receive from your supplier. The next big mistake that I made was that I didn't have any launch plan in place other than using Amazon pay-per-click ads. Now, I'm not saying that Amazon PPC doesn't work, but solely relying on it is not exactly a strategy. I could have done giveaways, I could have hired other services to help me rank, or maybe I could have got really creative and done something like in-person sales where you reimburse people for making discounted purchases of your item and let them keep the item in exchange for a review. This final mistake that I made might actually have been the biggest mistake of them all, and it is just the fact that I was being so stubborn that I took way too long to realize that this product wasn't going to work. I was so married to my idea and the branding and the fact that I didn't want to fail on this new project that I just waited way too long to pull the ripcord on this parachute. It was actually over 2 years later from the launch of the product to when I decided to finally throw in the towel. By then, I was not only out the $3,800 that I spent on the product, I was also out all the money that I spent on Amazon PPC, all the FBA storage fees, a ton of my time, and the money that I lost selling products at a loss trying to get sales to stimulate the listing. In the end, I couldn't even liquidate them, and I was forced to donate them to Goodwill. When the dust settled, I felt like such a failure that I had less than zero desire to try again. I would have got out with a smaller loss, yes, and maybe just a tax write-off, but most importantly, I wouldn't have been so crushed that I wouldn't want to try again. I would have still been in the game, but because I waited so long, I was completely crushed. And it's honestly a shame because I would have been able to go into try number 2 with all of the new knowledge that I gained from making these mistakes on my first attempt. I think this concept is pretty important. You literally have to know when to hold them and when to fold them, especially in private label, because not all products are gonna work. So the faster that you can recognize that a product's not working and liquidate it and get on to the next product that is gonna work, the better. This is also why lots of larger, successful private label sellers launch more than one product at the same time. That way, they get really good at it, they drop the bad ones, focus more on the good ones, create variations and bundles for the good ones, and they just keep rolling through. You literally gotta know when to hold them and when to fold them. Now for those bonuses that I promised those of you that made it this far in the video. Appreciate you. Through the lifespan of this product, I actually was able to sell 150 to 200 units or so, and I did get a bunch of reviews. I got a couple bad ones due to the quality of the stitching, but the content of a couple of the positive reviews were very interesting. Now, usually searching through customer reviews is a great strategy to find issues with products that you're competing against that you could then take that data and use it to improve your own products. So what I mean is that when you find a product or product category that you want to produce or compete against, you look at the reviews that your competitors are getting and you pay special attention to the 1 to 2 to 3 star reviews, and you take note of any problems that customers are having with the product that you could remedy in your product and thus make an improvement. In my case, I had a somewhat unique scenario. I had a couple reviews where customers were leaving me 5 stars, but they were also leaving lengthy comments talking about how they used the product in a way it wasn't intended for. This was extremely interesting to me and gave me a bunch of new ideas. To help illustrate this, I'm just going to go ahead and read those product reviews to you. So this was a 5-star review and the title says, "Awesome buy!" I used this for a very different purpose than it was intended for, but it worked amazingly well. I looped the handles of this product through the legs of our Easy Up canopy to make it appear like a circus tent for a party. It was great. They went on to describe some more pros and cons about the product, but it's not really relevant for the point that I'm trying to state. They also mentioned that all in all, for $10, this thing was a great buy. I was losing money at that price, but I was trying to stimulate the listing, right, to get sales. You can't really go wrong. And if you feel you can do better for this specific color, take a look around, because $34.99 is the cheapest I could find besides this one. I'll be ordering another, if not a few more. Interesting. The other 5-star review is just titled Parachute! I bought this parachute to use as a ceiling decoration in my haunted house this past year for my clown room. It is big, well constructed, and will last for years to come. Handles are sturdy and it is very bright. I'm happy with this purchase. So after receiving those two feedback, I immediately began searching for similar products in this niche that fulfilled what the customers wanted, and there honestly wasn't very many products that I could find. I also took note of some of the popular keywords that were appearing on these listings and then put them in my product title, my bullets, my description, and even on the back end as my keywords. So now I'm going down the rabbit hole of school or small carnival niche and just realizing that it is completely underserved. There was not a lot of products for the customers, and what was there was just overpriced. There was actually little to no options for carnival-themed canopies that were priced appropriately, and even now, there's still not a lot of options. And the rabbit hole for this niche goes a lot deeper, which means even more product opportunities. The great part with a lot of these products is that they're somewhat consumable, which means for the most part, customers will order them to use them one time and then probably throw them away. And if they need to get them again next year, they'll just buy it again. Some of the ideas I came up with were red and white striped table skirts, skimmer hats, little red and white striped carnival guy vests or costumes, maybe some weird mustaches, red and white striped themed popcorn bags or buckets, as well as games and prizes. Honestly, there was a lot of opportunity, especially to create bundle packages, because many of these customers were ordering the tablecloth and the prizes or a game, all kinds of different stuff. Ultimately, ending my short journey with private label was incredibly easy because I had so many other things going on at the time. My YouTube channel was starting to take off. This was right before I got the chance to interview Gary Vee. My used book business was still flourishing, and we were now getting heavy into retail arbitrage. I was sad to let it go, but in a weird way, it was super relieving to get one item off my plate, which allowed me some breathing room so that I could focus my attention and energy more onto the things that were already working for me at the time. If you're new to the concept of selling on Amazon or selling online in general, I got you. I made a completely free intro course that you can get in the description. There's a link. Click it right now. It is designed to help you have the smoothest start as possible and answer all the questions that you have and just get you going on the path to success. And if you found any value in this video, please hit the like button. If you're new here and you want to learn more about this kind of stuff, don't forget to subscribe. If there's any questions you have that I didn't answer in this video, drop them down below. I would love to answer those for you. So until next time, if you ain't flippin', you slippin'. Peace.